Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chris Fong, and I'll be talking about the Xoogler School over the next hour. I was at Google for 18.5 years, and I had a great time being able to share the knowledge of how to get into Google while I was at Google. Since then, I've started Xoogler.co, which is Google's largest alumni organization to help startup founders who used to work at Google. What we decided to do during this past couple of months is set up a program for college students who are taking a gap year during these challenging times. And so what we'll be doing is be able to help you, hopefully you are a college student or a recent college grad, figure out what you could be doing during these next few weeks. This is an 8-week program, which will be available on YouTube Live, as well as some separate discussions for people who have applied separately to really join us in a small group cohort. What I'll be talking about over the next hour is one, the background of Xoogler.co and Xoogler School. I'll invite James Cashen to talk about the Xoogler School program and what's coming up in the next 8 weeks. And after that, we'll be talking about what the 10 things you can do today to help you land a job. And also be sharing out how I landed my dream job and also specific networking opportunities. So let's start first about what is Xoogler.co and what is its mission. Google's been around since the late 1990s and really scaled in the 2000s, has grown even larger in the 2010s. I joined Google in 2006. Since then, there have been a lot of people who've started companies. And what we've been able to realize is there's more people within the Google ecosystem or ex-Google ecosystem that could be helpful to new startup founders. Xoogler.co organizes over 200 events and programs every year. Right now, as you can imagine, a lot of it's online. There are some parts of the world where there are in-person gatherings. We've done a ton of demo days where ex-Google founders and venture capitalists and angel investors mentor startup founders. And from there, they've been able to successfully raise money. What we decided to do as a leadership team during these times is expand this mentoring and this help to college students. And so we've started Xoogler School. Today's the very first day of these sessions and classes. We're so thankful you're tuning in, and please share any feedback you have with us at learn, L-E-A-R-N, at Xoogler.co, as we're putting this program for you, our users, and people watching this to really be helpful to you over the next 8 weeks or hopefully in your entire lifetime. Why do we think we can do this? Well, we've already done this very successfully. On the top right-hand side, you can see this Xoogler former intern called Nico holding Charmander from the Pokemon Go series and also the popular app. Well, he was working with us for 5 months in the end of 2018 and start of 2019. The photograph you see taken here is at Niantic Labs. Niantic was actually a spun out of Google. And what we've been able to do is engage a lot of these speakers to share knowledge to our group. This was taken when we did an event at Niantic Labs office where we had John Hankey, the founder of Niantic Labs, speak to us. He had previously sold a company into Google, was there for many years, and then left. So you can sort of read Nico's own testimonial about the Xoogler.co experience, where before he had very little LinkedIn contacts and very little contact in Silicon Valley itself. But because of a Fulbright program that the Xoogler was able to put together, and he had Nico work with Xoogler.co, he was able to meet many Xooglers, a lot of Silicon Valley veterans, network with a lot of them, learn the best way to land a job. And from that, he even started a job with one of these Xoogler mentors, as well as leadership group members, Mo. Nico is now continue working with Mo. Not only he started in Silicon Valley, but he's also now gone back to Europe, Nico that is, and continues to work with him. So we were able to give him access to our network, mentorship and help, where he's now working for the Silicon Valley company in Europe. And although we can't have hundreds or even thousands of students work with Xoogler.co, we know we can provide a lot of helpful information, as well as perhaps some access and some knowledge where you as a student can also tap into the Xoogler and Google ecosystem to land your job. The bottom is a photograph of our demo day in Google's San Francisco office, where we had Xooglers present their companies. On the right-hand side, you also see a note that the Wall Street Journal did about the Xoogler demo days. So what we've been able to do over the past few years is do demo days all around the world, whether it's London, Zurich, Paris, Singapore, Bangalore, LA, as well as Chicago, to help ex-Google founders through the generosity of a ton of volunteers and ex-Googlers. So thank you to everyone who put all those together. And now what we want to do is tap into the same generosity and help to help you, college students, learn more information about the working environment, how you could actually successfully apply for jobs and land jobs during these times. How do we actually do this in terms of the mentoring? So there are two photographs up here on the top left and top right. I'll talk about the top left first. This is a photograph when we actually have in-person mentoring in San Francisco. What we were able to do is have small groups of mentors come in who are ex-Googlers, mentor other Xoogler startup founders. And on top right, you can see a photograph of the Bay Bridge in the background, but this is at a venture capitalist office. This individual was a Xoogler, and we had about 10 or so Xoogler founders go into his office to get insights from him. So these group mentoring sessions, these sessions and knowledge sharing, it's very common in a Xoogle organization. As I mentioned before, we do over 200 events that's about knowledge sharing a year. And we've done it for 5 years now in terms of the establishment of the organization. We also have plenty of mentors now, over 200 have volunteered, including Tara. So Tara was not only an intern at Google, she would join full-time as a software engineer, as well as going over to the X division of Alphabet. And she's made herself available to mentor students within the community. Kim, as well, she worked in major tech companies from Google to others, as well as venture capital firm right now. And she's also made herself available to mentor college students. So what we want to do is provide a process and an organization to help you as a college student gain knowledge to how to find a job. We know that not everyone wants to work at a tech company, and that's totally fine. We're going to have a lot of sessions that are not tech company related, but what we're able to do is provide you some background of what it's like to work in a tech company. What are tech company jobs like? Not only being a software engineer, there's marketing, sales, and others, and whether you should even apply. And if you do want to apply, we're going to share some tips on how you can do so successfully. How do we start this? Well, there's a few ways we started this. On the 15th of July, I had a conversation with a USC adjunct professor. And through the conversation with this friend of mine, I started realizing that perhaps there's an opportunity to actually educate and share more knowledge with college students in general. I actually called up Nico that you saw earlier and asked him more about his own experience with Xoogle.co, how it perhaps helped him. And I had a conversation with James Cashen. James, you can see here, is featured in this CNBC article that went out a couple of weeks ago. A lot of you may have heard about us through that. And I asked him about his own experience currently in college, as he's been sharing more about his experience. He's on a rowing team at Cornell. And given what's been happening on college campuses across the country, we realized there's perhaps an opportunity for us to be more helpful to college students who are not wanting to go back to full-time studies, or you can't go back to full-time studies anyway. So that's how we decided to do this. And with that, I want to turn it over to James, where he'll share more how he decided to put together the Xoogler School program. Over to you, James.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, hi. Thanks, Chris. It's great to be speaking here on this first day. Chris, if you could push the slide to the next one. Thank you. Yeah, like Chris said, I started interning for Xoogler back in June and had an incredible summer. Almost, I would say it's like a crash course on sort of how Google works, and I'm meeting some incredible Xooglers across the world and learning how they sort of landed their positions, their best practices, and then they would sort of offer to mentor me and sort of help me plan out my career. And so when I started thinking about this next semester, I'm going to my senior year, and I started talking with classmates and teammates about this next fall, and there's just a lot of uncertainty around sort of a regular semester at university. So we started talking about this idea of a gap semester, but then it became a problem of how would we fill that time? It's kind of late to start looking for internships. And there's a lot of uncertainty going back to class, with most classes being online. And I started talking to Chris about this and my other boss at Xoogler, Ankit, and we started brainstorming ideas about filling this time with a lot of value, and started thinking about this idea of using Xoogler School. So instead of having the ex-Google network mentoring Googlers and former Googlers, actually leveraging that for students. because I can personally say, like, I've learned an incredible amount over the summer, and just have been able to sort of widen my network and also just learn a lot more about industries I never really would have considered working in the past. And so if we can do that for other students, I think it'd be a really incredible experience. So that's how the idea came about. And we've been working on the curriculum since. And the three main things I sort of spoke with my classmates about, spoke with Chris about, are learning, sort of preparing for your post-grad life, preparing for that career of yours, learning how to collaborate in a professional sense, and learning sort of how to goal set, work on project teams, and then learning how to network, especially in this digital age where everything is moved onto Zoom. And LinkedIn is even more important because you're not having those sort of off the cuff interactions in a professional workplace. So learning how to do these things in terms of preparing, just getting the skills and learning maybe the gaps that you need to fill. If you are in a certain major and you're looking to enter a marketing career, or you're in a software engineer and you're looking to find your first job outside of college, hearing from industry experts and people who have actually worked a few years in those positions, and learning what are the gaps that I need to fill, what's going to be expected of me on day one, what would these people, what do they wish they had known in college and they can sort of tell students now. And then also just making sure your portfolio is sort of prepared as best can be when you do start searching for jobs, and learning from someone who actually works at LinkedIn, sort of how to optimize your LinkedIn profile, how to write your resume for your specific position that you're looking for, and where to apply, how to search for those jobs, how to sort of find warm introductions, and so forth. And in terms of collaboration, I think that there's a lot to be said for sort of goal setting and learning how to work on a team. And we all get experience in project groups in school, but it's a completely different thing when you are working on a professional team at your first job. And I think learning how to sort of manage a team and learning how to work within a team, learning the Google objectives and key results system, something that I learned this summer. It's been incredibly helpful to me, and I think a lot of students would benefit from it as well. So just learning sort of how to go into your first job confident and prepared for these first interactions and sort of these first things that are expected of you. And then learning how to assimilate to different cultures, including Google and other tech companies as well. And then finally, I think learning how to network. This is a really big one, and I've sort of been learning more and more this summer from Chris. Chris is a bit of a serial entrepreneur, and so I've been learning a lot about how to maintain these professional relationships that you get sort of through connections, whether that's on LinkedIn or through former internships. Sort of how to foster those relationships and how to actually keep them going, and then also learning how to present yourself online. And I think that's a super important one, and we have a workshop lined up for this. Learning the communication skills that are expected of everyone now. It's a whole different world with most business happening over webinars and Zoom calls. And so learning how to be professional, learning how to pitch yourself to prospective employers I think is really important. So yeah, just to go back to it, I think that the main things that we want to accomplish are preparing our students for the careers, learning professional collaboration skills, and then also learning from the get-go sort of how to network and make sure you're building that network of yours. So just a broad overview of what we are going to accomplish week by week. This first week obviously is just an introduction, and then learning. You're hearing from Chris and I now. You'll hear from Amit a bit later about sort of career planning from the former Google Cloud president, and learning how to sort of map out the next 2 to 5 years. I think that a lot goes. There can be a lot that can be said for having an idea of what you want to do, but then actually putting it down on paper and sort of mapping out your next steps, I think is really important. And then weeks 2 and 3, I'm super excited to sit in and hear as well from a huge range of different leaders in different industries, sort of about their career paths, the skills that were expected of them, and what drew them to those positions, whether that's marketing or HR or software engineering or product. Just learning about those industries and hearing about different perspectives on those to see, if there's an industry that really stands out to you, or maybe one that you weren't thinking of that actually looks like it could be up your alley, and then learning how to sort of break into those industries, what's necessary to do that. And then towards the middle of the semester, sort of like I said, learning the Google approach, learning how to set objectives and key results in your life and in your professional life. And then more practically, as the semester moves forward, learning how to apply to these jobs, learning how to interview for these jobs, and then making sure that you are kind of prepared to become a workplace leader and be sort of take on your first couple of roles with a lot of confidence. And then finally, just learning how to take all these lessons and making sure there's a lot of different speakers, a lot of different viewpoints, making sure that you sort of are synthesizing that and making sure you will move on and sort of take all these lessons with you. And so for the next week, we're looking at, like I said, landing your job, planning your career journey with Amit later, which we're really excited about. And then hearing from 4 other speakers Wednesday and Friday about someone who has spent a lot of time working in product in their career and how they're now transitioning to using tech to fight climate change in their later part of their career. Learning about an entry-level sales position, learning how to sort of move up and explore different roles if you're working for a bigger company. And then finally, standing out at 2 tech recruiters from Stephanie Fackrell. And Stephanie actually onboarded me and has taught me a whole lot. And she does tech recruiting for universities with Samsung, and she previously worked for Apple and Google. So she has a lot of really good knowledge and is an incredible source to hear from. So we are very excited about that. And then Tuesday and Thursday, Chris, we are moving on to sort of the workshop series, which as best we can have sort of times in the hour-long workshops to be sort of reflective and actually look down and look at your own work, whether that's your resume or your next career plan, and mapping that out. But these are a little bit more interactive and a little bit more reflective. And so these are sort of an opportunity to actually sort of take a pen and paper out and get some actual experience in sort of planning and working on your own professional portfolio. And so with that being said, I am super excited for the next 8 weeks, and I'm so glad that everyone could join today. And I'm going to send it back to Chris for a little bit more on what to expect and what to do for the next 8 weeks. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much, James. So hopefully you can get some background what's coming to you over the next 8 weeks. As James had mentioned, we started this in June, in July, and really only August through a bunch of our small group leadership team, where they're all volunteers like Ankit, Julia, Jen, and Ash. So thank you everyone to have contributed to this. Also the feedback from a ton of industry professionals as we have developed this program for you, but we want you more of your feedback as well. So what I want to do right now for the next few minutes is actually go through some examples of the knowledge that we shared over the next 8 weeks. I'm going to share from my own personal experience on actual things you can do today to actually improve your chances to either land a job or what you could be doing to think about landing a future job that could be a dream job, and also perhaps share more insights on perhaps some interesting jobs you may want to look at other tech companies. So the first thing I want to share is not what things you can do today. So over here, reaching out to an alum. I was lucky enough to have gone into the US via a Cornell University exchange program, where when I was on campus, there were an amazing set of alumni who would come back on different events and programs and make themselves available. I still clearly remember the first time I met a CEO called John Alexander of the company called Seaboard. We were at Sage Hall at Cornell, and he was just next to me at some event where alumni would be around. His company was based in Ithaca, and the genuineness and helpfulness he provided me through small interactions there, as well as introducing me to people on his team, a guy called Greg Hubble, as well as other people I got to meet, has stayed with me. That was back in 2000 and 2003. And I remember those sessions fondly. And frankly, those alumni come back to campus because they want to help students like you. We know that today in this age, there's a lot of challenges for alumni to go back on campus. A lot of them are not going on campus if you are indeed a student on campus. As you probably know, some campuses are not even available to be going on campus these days. So I do want to encourage you, though, to reach out to alumni. They want to hear from you. And there's plenty of alumni who want to be helpful during this time, similar to how there's a lot of ex-Googlers who want to be helpful to students. Your own alumni can feel your pain and feel the challenges as a student. We've all been there. We've all been there trying to actually find a job. So they want to be helpful to you. So I would encourage you, one, look at some alumni directories that your school may offer. Two, look on LinkedIn, but also other online platforms where you can actually strike up a conversation with your alumni and reach out to them. And frankly, practice makes perfect. So keep doing that until you can actually perfect that. And during this next 8 weeks, we will have sessions to show you how you can perhaps cold email someone successfully. And I'll share a little bit about that as well in the next couple of slides. So that's the first one. So two, share your story online. People want to know who you are, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Medium, whether it's on your own personal blog. What people want to know is you as an individual and who you are. The quicker you do that in terms of past history, a potential employer could see who you are as a candidate for the future. It's very hard these days to actually assess an individual through a resume or online profile. So what you can potentially do is that you produce content that shows your own thinking about a certain topic, about certain classes, perhaps even blog about what you're hearing about during the sessions over the next 8 weeks, and have your own spin and own your opinion. People will be reading those and assessing you for future jobs if you're able to do that successfully. Just share your story, and so it gives future employers more information and data on you as a potential candidate for the jobs that you may actually potentially suitable for. In fact, I've invested in over 40 startup companies, and in startups, what investors look for is actually a track record, but also the ability for a startup entrepreneur to pivot, to change, to learn from the experience before they actually put in money. So what you can think about it similarly in your own career is think about how you can actually start blogging or writing about your own experience early on. So when someone is potentially looking at you versus another candidate, they have more data to show how you've developed in your own personal career, your own personal development in a specific topic. And you could potentially use that as an example when you're applying for your dream job in the future. The third, share your knowledge and be helpful. So I put two logos here, Dorm Room Fund and Rough Draft VC. So Dorm Room Fund is a part of a top VC firm called First Round Capital. Rough Draft VC, it's part of another top venture capital firm called General Catalyst. And these two programs are specifically tailored for college students. Go check them out. The reason why these venture capital firms want to tap into college students is you can see the future. You are actually discovering the next TikTok out there. You are actually playing with the next Instagram or Snapchat, and you have more knowledge than anyone else to actually be able to share this with venture capitalists. And not only that, not only venture capitalists, but other future employers of the field of your interest. People want to actually know what you're thinking, what campuses are doing. So don't think that just because you're a college student, you have nothing to share, or you're only looking up to someone for their knowledge. They want to look at your knowledge. So check out these two opportunities if you're interested in venture capital space, but also thinking about how you can actually share knowledge and be helpful to these VCs or other people in general. The fourth one is volunteering for projects. I'll share more about my own experience, how I landed my dream job, but part of it is you as an individual needs to stand out. You need to look at how you can actually get some experience in the field of interest and choice, whether it's in the software engineering space, whether it's the marketing, whether it's in business planning. Try to think of how can you actually gain your experience in a field of interest to show and demonstrate interest of the job that you're going to be applying for in the future. The fifth item I'll share is about Google story, but plenty of other companies. So when I look at the landscape of all these industry leaders in the tech space, even some of them in the non-tech space, a lot of them are populated by a few early Googlers. Googlers, if you don't know that term yet, is a Google employee, and that's why we're also called Xoogler, ex-Google employee for short. And back in the early days, in 2000s to 2007, 2010, there were plenty of executives within the company that helped Google scale. And they were able to get really great job opportunities because the company was growing so fast. Similar to that, if you're able to find a company that's growing fast today, you'll be able to actually tap into their growth and actually land some amazing job opportunities in that company, but also other companies, as other companies want to tap into your knowledge of how you help that company scale. So when I talk about company scaling, you may be a college student thinking, what am I really talking about, discussing about? What I want you to really look at is look at websites such as AngelList. TechCrunch, other tech blogs and information, which we can share in the next 8 weeks, to find companies and tap into companies that are growing fast in their industry of interest. Because during this climate, you can probably realize the tech companies or some tech companies are still growing rapidly and they need you. So the faster you can discover them and discover which companies are in your area of interest, the more likelihood you'll be able to find a job that will suit your interest, but also prepare your growth for the next 10, 20 years. Number 6, follow industry and interest related podcasts. So there's plenty of industry information that you can source on Twitter, on all these blogs I had mentioned, but also check out Shuffle. So Shuffle was started by an ex-Google founder. That's how I know of them. But essentially what they do is provide tidbits of podcasting information where you can actually discover podcasts in specific industries, usually around tech. And from there, you can actually discover what kind of companies to follow, but also get a quick summary of certain companies or venture capitalists or investors to actually continue your pathways. As I mentioned, try to find a fast-growing company. You find fast-growing companies by checking out the sites of these venture capital firms, whether it's Dorm Room Fund, Rough Draft Ventures, checking out these podcasts like Shuffle, and keep tabs on them. Number 7, look at job descriptions. Look at job descriptions not only as the entry-level jobs, perhaps 2, 3, 5 years out, and then work backwards. You can only land a job in 5 years' time that you really want if you can actually get the experience today to get there, and sort of perhaps network using that conversation. Go reach out to someone who has their dream job and just say, look, you know that the jobs that you want is not available today, but can you actually prepare yourself for those jobs and perhaps use that as an opening conversation on LinkedIn or through other avenues. And to be the best candidate for your dream job, what you really need to do is actually, whether I mentioned for volunteer for projects, identify fast-growing companies, share your story online, really prepare yourself for the dream job early on, which is today. And so you can actually land that in 3 to 5 or 10 or even 15 years time. It takes a while to land that dream job, right? And what we have here is Xoogler School speaker series and workshop sessions that James had shared. Be curious and ask questions. And James, do we have a lot of questions coming in from Dory? If you're looking at the YouTube live, you'll be able to see a link on Dory where Dory was internal to that Google developed, that's now also available outside, where we'll be able to get questions answered. So I know Lucas has raised his hand, so we will take questions perhaps at the end. But James, if you want to let me know whether we have incoming questions later on, that'd be great as well. And if you do have questions, definitely put it in the YouTube live or the Dory link where we can answer them. And the last one, 10, we're going to share a lot of tips in our newsletters. We know some people can't join these live. We know people can't join our smaller cohorts, but we will be producing as much information and helpful information for you over the next few weeks that you can actually subscribe to, whether it's going onto this bit.ly link or you can sign up also on the XooglerSchool.com website. I'll take a pause here. James, do we have any questions that we want to take now, or should we wait till later?
I do see one asking if Rough Draft VC and Dorm Room Fund are open to students outside the US.
I'm not aware of right now, but if you check out the website, they probably will be able to share that with you. In general, these VC firms have been focused on investing in the US, but I believe they've been looking at outside as well. So there are also versions of these in overseas locations. So it depends on where your locations are. You should be able to discover them. And frankly, if they are not, you should go be approaching the VC firm in your location to start them. Dorm Room Fund and Rough Draft Ventures are mainly around the US when I checked out their website. But if they're not international yet, go email them and ask them, can you be actually starting the international location office? A lot of fast-growing startups are now being started globally, whether it's India, whether it's in China, whether it's Latin America. There's so many areas where fast-growing companies are being started today. And if they're not actually in your local area, reach out to these 2 VC firms, but even your local VC firms in your local region and country. So, and if you email learn@xoogler.co, we should be able to point you to VC firms in your local region that perhaps may be interested in speaking with you as well. Anything else, James?
Great. No, that's all for now, Chris. Continue on.
Thank you. So what I wanted to do is actually show you some screenshots of the jobs that are available at Google. Again, Xoogler School is started by Google alumni. So we're not formally associated with Google anymore, but all our members have worked at Google before. We now have 9,000 members. And you can join the Xoogler.co community if you're a Google employee or an ex-Googler. So what we do have is knowledge about how these jobs work. And so I wanted to highlight these three different screenshots. One is an APM, Google APM program. So the Google Associate Product Manager program is what APM program is called. So a product manager, for those who don't know, it's like a mini general manager that have dotted line responsibilities for engineering, legal, sales, BD, all these different functions. And so an APM program is for someone to actually enter that role at an early age. There are internships, but also full-time jobs. So check out that if you're someone in college that you are interested in those type of jobs. The second is APMM. So similar to Associate Product Manager, there's Associate Product Marketing Manager. So if you're interested in marketing, check out this website and also see what they're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, you can only land these jobs if you know perhaps about it in advance. Some people are very lucky, they hear about it, they apply for it, they get in. But many people have taken time and effort to actually prepare their resumes and experience before they can land one of these jobs. So try to do that today. If you are whether a freshman, junior, sophomore, if you're a college senior, there's also opportunities for you to get involved in a lot of projects to prepare you to apply for these jobs. And then the last one, you see all these software engineering jobs also available on the site. Google being a software engineering company, all these tech companies that we're going to talk about, where all these Google alumni now have plenty of software engineering jobs. And if you're not a software engineer yet, you could potentially discover whether you want to be one, or look at the other jobs, as I mentioned over here, that are suitable for students. So check out the student careers website on Google, but also all these other tech company sites for the opportunities that you want. As I mentioned, look at the job description, what they're looking for, and get your project experience in preparation to apply for those jobs today. This is the best time to do that. I'm going to transition, not talk about myself and my dream job, but also share about how I got there. Not to share and to want to brag about anything what I did, but just to give you some specific examples of what you can do today to actually prepare yourself for applying for that job. So I know this is a bit small, but you can zoom in and perhaps look at it a bit better or go a bit closer. But this was a job description I applied for in 2013. So I was at Google for about 7 years already. This is a job which is called Strategic Partner Development Manager, VCs and startups based in Mountain View. So Mountain View is Google's headquarters. And so I was actually living in New York City before applying for this job and working for Google for 7 years in that office. Now, I'll walk through a little bit about that and talk about my story on the right-hand side, all these logos you see. What it is essentially, it works with the top VC firms in high potential startups and help them access all of Google's product areas. Minimum of BA/BS, preferred qualification MBA, being able to deal with VCs and startup partners and all of these internal teams. So I'll interpret this a bit for you, where they're looking for someone who has experience with venture capital firms. So what's your background and experience? Startups, preferred an MBA, but also a knowledge of Google's ecosystem of products. So without having the experience across Google for 7 years, without potentially an MBA, without potentially knowing about startups or venture capital firms, it was probably highly unlikely I could have landed this job, which I was really in love with. And actually, it was because of this job I was able to start Xoogler.co, which now is spawning the Xoogler School. It was in this job I got to meet probably over 100 people on a regular basis, understanding what their products could do to help future founders or founders of these tech companies that Google wanted to partner with. We would actually meet a lot of my ex-colleagues or the colleagues at the time, understand how the products could be used by a startup and try to partner them up with specific startups that could use them and work with them. And it was through the relationships we built with the top venture capital firms that we were able to be introduced to the startups and discuss who we should be working with. So how did I get there? So for those who probably are wondering where my accent is from, I grew up in Australia, in Sydney, and actually was born in Singapore. What I was able to do in college is actually start a textbook trading service. It's called an all-purpose site for students. This is back in 2001. And we allowed students to trade second textbooks with each other. It was through this mini business, a project that actually helped me land a future job. But I wanted to share that where you as a college student should potentially look at where the opportunities to start startups today. And even if it's not a startup that could perhaps become the next Snapchat, perhaps start thinking what are useful products out there that your users in some cases, in this case, probably your fellow students could find useful because you know the users better than anyone else. Similar to how James and I were talking a lot over the summer, he knew what his fellow cohort and classmates were interested in. That's why we wanted to put this program together for you. I was still a student at Sydney University when I started this project and company. But then during my last year, I did an exchange program at Cornell. And it was through that I actually was looking for jobs. And frankly, similar to perhaps a few of you watching today, I found it really hard to find a job. This is back in 2003. And through that, I decided to look at perhaps finding a way to stay around the US. And and a lot of international students probably can relate to this, you need a job or you need to be doing something with a visa to do that. I was luckily able to be hired on campus for 6 months and this job at Cornell. And through that, I applied for more jobs. There was a Cornell career fair that I was able to go into and where Expedia was hiring. So Expedia looked at me and looked at one, I wasn't a Cornell Hotel School student. Two is what background did I have with travel? And the travel experience I was able to share was I did a business plan in a class for launching a version of Expedia in Asia before Expedia could get there. And so that was what they looked at, but also my startup experience starting this all-purpose site for students. And so what I was able to do is use the project/business as well as my background writing a business plan to land my job in Expedia. And that's how I managed to get there. So as I mentioned earlier, I encourage everyone to think about what job they want in the future in this space. I want to get into the tech space, but I wasn't a software engineer. Try to do projects, business plans, launching a company perhaps, and that could help you be able to talk about, but also show your passion about specific industries. And that's why I mentioned perhaps start blogging, start writing about specific things, where if people can look at your background and acknowledge what you're interested in, they'll be able to have more confidence that you do indeed perhaps are the best candidate for this role. So through my time at Expedia, I was able to gain different knowledge and also get to work with different people. And I realized I wanted to explore more than just the online travel space. A mentor of mine that actually taught me a lot about Google search. So this is back in 2005, 2006, was able to teach me more about AdWords. He ran Expedia's program with Google, where the travel industry, especially online travel companies, are one of the big spenders with Google as well as Facebook and other online advertising options. And so he was able to teach me a bit more about Google AdWords back in the day. And for Google specifically, there were 2 other jobs I applied for that I got rejected. So I went for interviews, on campus interviews as well back in 2006, but wasn't able to land that job, but realized that you need to keep trying, right? There's a saying that a lot of people talk about where you miss all goals that you don't take, right? So keep trying and actually keep applying. If that is your dream job, if that is your dream opportunity, only you can stop yourself from going after it, right? Definitely apply for the right job. Definitely apply for the right job you have a chance with, but through this next 8 weeks, hopefully will give you the lessons you can learn to be ready for applying for those specific jobs they really want. So I was able to find and land this job at Google because I had a specific background, even though I was interviewed for ads role in the travel space, I found my way in because they were looking for someone to work with education companies. There was a advertising group within the New York office that didn't really focus in the education sector yet. And so because of my experience starting the all-purpose site for students, Student Point, because of my experience, they were able to bring me on board to start discovering what it would be like working with all these education companies and institutions for the advertising and marketing needs. So that was back in 2006. Through there, I had a great time working with both my business partners, my colleagues. Google was in a great time of growth. This was before Google had started Android, before Google had also launched a lot of different new products. But I realized I really want to do more about startups. And Silicon Valley is where startups are from, most of them. And now we're trying to spread the word, and there are a lot of great startups everywhere. But I realized I wanted to actually learn more about startups. So I looked at business school to learn that. There was a joint MBA program offered by Berkeley as well as Columbia that I was lucky enough to get into. You see a photograph here in the middle where a professor of mine, Steve Blank, is a serial entrepreneur. If you check out steveblank.com, you see a lot of great articles that he would write about his time running an amazingly successful company. And here we had a little gathering where he was featured on a Harvard Business Review. And so we had a little gathering with that professor. But what was really interesting was the time I spent in the program to prepare myself for my future job. It's really about the community you meet. And that's what we were trying to do with the Xoogler School students, where we want people to meet each other, be able to learn from each other, and perhaps be able to work on projects together. So in terms of what I was able to do in this class was I not only did his class, I did an independent study with him. And in an independent study with him, I, again, was still at Google. It was a part-time executive program is what they called. I was able to interview at least 25 entrepreneurs, startup founders that sold their company into Google. I wrote a report on it, distributed internally inside Google, and the learnings I got in terms of the experience, what they were able to do, more about their startups, the behaviors, and was able to learn more about the opportunity. And so as a result, I got to know successful startup founders who sold their companies to Google. It was through that experience and others I got my dream job. So moving from there, I was able to actually continue to foster a startup community in New York City for startup founders, people who've left Google. A couple of them have started billion-dollar companies since then. And so in terms of the last photograph, if you zoom in right into what's on a t-shirt, it talks about Google for entrepreneurs. So that was the predecessor for Google for startups. So I wasn't associated with Google for entrepreneurs, but in many cases, Google has 20% projects you can volunteer for to get different experiences. And I was able to apply for and got this lead role to actually to run this one-day program for the entrepreneurship community in New York City. I tapped into different speakers in the New York office and was able to actually get a lot of members from the community to learn from these entrepreneurs that sold their companies to Google, or people who actually have startup experience and wanted to help startups. So it was through that experience as well as my past experience that I was able to be suitable for this role that you see, this strategic partner development manager, VC and startups role based in Mountain View. It was a very highly sought after role. A lot of people applied for it. And it was based on the experience, one, but two, the knowledge I had to write in to my manager after my interview. And frankly, my manager for that role actually told me when I was interviewing with him, said, look, you're late in the process. There are plenty of great candidates. Don't waste your time. Because after that when I went back and clearly frustrated, I want to get that role. It's a great role. I think I'm the best fit. I was able to write a very long but detailed and helpful email to show why I was able to be helpful to startups and to do that job. In many cases, these jobs, you need to know how to do those jobs before you even do that job. So what we want to do in the Xoogler School is prepare you to be ready to actually get those jobs that you really want to. But doing projects, learning from other people, speaking to people, and hearing from people that perhaps have been in those jobs already. So that was that. Long story short, that's the purpose of the Xoogler School, is to use the experience that perhaps has shaped me, but also all the other industry professionals we've got feedback from to help you land your dream job. Any questions that have come in, James, that I should be answering, or should I continue?
So far, we've answered them all in the Dory itself, but feel free, anyone who's watching, to go to that Dory link to pose a question either to any of us or directly to Chris as we move forward.
Yeah, and a Dory link for those who are just watching live, you can access it on the YouTube page as well. So that's how you can find a Dory link. In sort of closing, there's a couple more things I want to make sure I shared. It's networking, right? How do you actually get to specific jobs? How do you get to specific people? The busiest people some of the busiest people today are people who are investors. They get literally thousands, not tens of thousands of emails every day, or sorry, not every day, every year, to pitching them. And so how do you actually get looked at and actually versus all the other emails they're getting? You actually be helpful to them. It's the general advice I would give. But the first thing to think about is be thoughtful. So I'll show you an example. So an ex-Googler, Eric over here, emailed me a few days ago. And what I love about this email, and I got permission from him to share, I've blacked out a few things to be more specific. I'll read the email since it's a bit small. In the subject, interested in intro to blank. from him, hey, Chris, hope all is well with you. So just something nice to as a nice greeting. Awesome to see your work with gap year students. So he knows I'm working on the Xoogler School program. Through that, it shows that he knows. He's not asking a blanket ask, right? He's actually taking the time to know what I'm up to. We have been spending time on college campuses of Halo, his own company and startup, and it's been super fun to work with students. So relevance, context, shows affinity and building a rapport with me and what I'm doing. The next paragraph, I recently met the founder of a new incubator called, it's a part-time, no equity. Anyway, he continues talking about who he wants me to introduce me to potentially. But what I love about this is, given all I'm doing with Xooglers, I thought there'd be a cool partnership opportunities. It'll be an interesting route to take. Let me know if it's interesting for you and hope you are well. Look, Eric is a super busy guy. He had a great job at Google. So in companies, there's a team called corporate development that looks at strategy, but also at acquiring companies. And so mergers and acquisitions is another term that's used. And he's doing his own company and startup. But guess what? Eric took the time to write a very specific and helpful email to me. And so in the future, and again, I did this in the past and in future as well, because I know how thoughtful Eric is. When he needs something, his email will definitely be bubbled up, right? So be helpful before you ask. So this is the first thing, if I could share anything. Think about how you can be helpful to people. I mentioned before in a couple of slides where even VCs who are extremely busy need the help of you as a college student to understand what's happening on campus, to find the next Snapchat, right? So you can be helpful to anyone, perhaps who you think you may not be helpful with. So be really thoughtful in terms of how you write to people, in terms of how you actually follow up. So in terms of other examples of being thoughtful, when you meet people, whether it's online, whether it's in person in the future, send thank you notes, whether it's via email, whether it's cards. There's small things you can do to set up alerts, perhaps. Just do it something in a genuine way, which shows your own personality, but also shows that you are thinking of them versus wanting something out of them. And also seek people's advice. I think before you make an ask, seek people's advice, get their thoughts, or even send updates. That was why I was also mentioning, perhaps start writing. If you actually write and reference people, so material or what they're doing, it just shows that you are actually taking the time to acknowledge them, but also you've done your own research, right? I'll talk about a bit of research now as a second main point over here. So James Buckhouse is a design partner at a top venture capital firm called Sequoia. On the right-hand side, he spoke to a small set of Xoogler founders in one of these mentoring sessions I mentioned we had organized in the past. So if I were to invite him again to speak in the future, I would actually want to do a bit more research on what he's interested in, so I can actually be very precise in how I invite him and specific things to invite him for. So this is his screenshot of Twitter right now, and he's asking questions, right? So you as a student, if you know what industry you're trying to get into, go on Twitter, go on LinkedIn, and perhaps engage with industry professionals you want to network with, and not just ask them for a job, just engage with the content. Here he is. What is your favorite comic or mythological or cinematic or fictional moment when a character tests newly found powers? So it's an interesting content. If this is interesting to you, something genuine to say, interact with it. In many cases on Twitter and all these social networks is how people start getting to know people online and develop a relationship. And one day you could perhaps land a job, but frankly, forget about the job. It just enriches your life generally to actually learn and interact with these people. You don't need an email or in-person relationship with them to start with. Just see what's interesting for you and be able to interact with the content, and that can actually help you in the future. And the last thing I'll share with the genuine networking piece is really to think about what you want to be doing in the future, what your skill sets are, how you can be helpful to people, and actually go execute and do that. So I think with that, these are two things I want to make sure I shared regarding the networking piece. We're going to have plenty of speakers that some of you may ask questions using a Dory too, but guess what? If they are talking about specific topics that really interest you, go network with them on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or all these social platforms they may be on, and share specific perhaps information, knowledge, say hello, thank them for the information, say how it could be relevant for you. Or frankly, you may even write a summary of their talk and say, look, I heard from the speaker, and this will be on your blog, this is how you interpreted the information, and this is how other people could be interested in their talk or session. and perhaps make it more relevant by weaving in your own experience of how you've consumed the data and information, and you want to share with your other students or other audience members. And I would say even once that is ready, mention them on Twitter, on LinkedIn, maybe send the speaker an email to mention how much it meant to you regarding them taking the time up to speak, and point towards your own blog post or post. So that's what I want to go through for genuine networking for now. So finally, want to make sure that you knew what was next. At 1 p.m. today, come back to this YouTube channel where I'll be doing a fireside chat, or chat with Amit Singh. Again, the Xoogler community astounds me continuously. I never met Amit at Google. He was the president of Google Cloud. He also ran what Google was doing in AR, VR before moving over to Palo Alto Networks. And he reached out directly, saying, I want to mentor college students. It's a great community, and this community wants to help you more than ever before during these times. So keep coming back to this YouTube channel. Check out XooglerSchool.com. Join our email list. We want to provide as much information for you as possible to be helpful to you. So I know it's a very challenging time. We want to do our best to be able to be helpful for you, whether it's to set you up for your internship, for your career, but hopefully at least for the next 8 weeks, we'll give you some ideas to be helpful to you right now. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining. And if you don't have any other questions, I'll turn over to James to see whether there's any questions, but I'm happy to hear from you at learn@xoogler.co as well. James.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We do have a couple of questions on the Dory. If we could wrap this, I'll also pass them on to you. But I also want to say, please submit any feedback you have on how we can help make this a really effective and helpful program for you. If you have any feedback, please don't hesitate to put it in the Dory, or to email learn@xoogler.co, so we can help sort of shape this curriculum as we move forward. And I think some of these questions hopefully will be answered in the next couple of weeks, but I'll pose them to Chris. Someone is asking, how long after completing the program can we expect to land a really a dream job? And I think Amit will definitely speak to this, but Chris, do you have any advice?
Sure. So it really depends what your dream job is. I think if you speak to many people who've achieved certain things in their career, the journey there is more exciting than being there. So I think just because you achieve certain things doesn't mean that it's more enjoyable trying to achieve something than being there, right? It's the friends you make, the struggle you go through, the challenges. All of you have got into a certain thing, was a high school, whether it's a college, whether it's you've landed into a sporting team, right? Enjoy the whole process. I enjoyed every part of my own process, and it landed me that dream job. And I really enjoy working with startups and venture capital firms and all teams inside Google. And it was really enjoyable. But guess what? I was only in that job for a year and a quarter. There was a reorg at Google, and I realized I want to do my own startup. So I left that dream job. And it took me a long time to get there. So I enjoyed the entire process. I would say, one, enjoy your process more than that pinnacle. The pinnacle could only last, for me, was a year. And so it was the entire process that I really enjoyed. But it really depends on the job, right? And your background and what the job needs. So without further context, it's hard for us to give direct feedback. But again, learn@xoogler.co, so LEARN@XOOGLER.co. We can provide perhaps more direct feedback in terms of what you're looking for. So it depends on what it is. Next, James.
Yeah, let me take a look. I think that pretty much wraps up the Dory. So I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. But like I said, please follow up with us and email us if we weren't able to answer anything specifically. And yeah, thanks so much. I'm really, really excited for this program.
Yeah. So yeah, before you go, a few things. One is all these sessions will be laid out on our website on XooglerSchool.com. There's a Google Calendar that you'll be able to add onto your own calendar, where there'll be reminders, where these YouTube live links will be alive there. I want to make sure I acknowledge the entire team to put this together in a short period of time, whether it's Ankit Jain, who's been running Xoogler.co with me for the past few years, whether it's Jen Lowe, who's been amazing, bringing her education experience, Julia Levy, who really helped with the communications as well as the community strategies, doing this as a side project. with us Arthur Bush, who's really helped with the mentoring piece and now with a lot of strategy work. Mariusz Lipinski, who really helped from day one, thinking about and being a thought partner of how we could be doing this. Obviously, Joe just came on the team recently, but thank you, Joseph, for helping with all this. And this is really James's inspiration. We had this community since 2015, and we've been doing a lot of these things with ex-Google founders, the ex-Google community, but it was only because of him sharing his experience right now as a college student that we decided to mobilize this ex-Google community. Now with over 200 mentors that want to help you as a college student. We only would know what we should be hosting in future sessions and series. We have plenty of sessions already lined up, but the more you tell us via email or LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, the more we know what to really organize for the rest of our time. And we add more things as well. Again, we have a very strong community that wants to help college students throughout this time. We're here for you. We know it's a very challenging time. I was lucky to get through into different job interviews because of things I learned from people who perhaps open doors. We want to structure this series to be helpful to you. So let us know what you need, and we're here as a support mechanism for you. And again, thanks for tuning here, and good luck and stay safe out there. And thank you again for your support and listening.